Okay, we're live. I'm here today with Jimmy Lai. Jimmy is from Lai and Turner, and welcome, Jimmy.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, so Jimmy, today we're just going to be chatting with you about just what you do. We're going to talk a little bit of law, going to talk a little bit of immigration, life, uh, and talk a little bit of tech, see where the conversation goes to, and then let's see how it goes. So,
Yeah,
my name is Francois. Um, I'm from a company called Mormax. We do tech for lawyers, and I asked Jimmy if he would like to meet with me so that we could sort of run through an interview, which is just informal and just to learn a little bit more about what his company does. So, Jimmy, I've got this group of South Africans. It's called South Africans Immigrating to the US. That I've got about 17,500 members. And
wow.
although South Africa is not it's not a treaty country that can get E-2 visas, I was very intrigued by what you do, right? Because you specialize in those E-2 visas. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where this is the visa that I discovered for myself. I didn't know about this visa until I was about to graduate, and I was struggling to find a job. And let me go back a little bit. I'm Jimmy.
Yes.
I'm
Tell
from
me about you.
Taiwan. Yeah, so I'm from Taiwan. I moved here to Oklahoma when back in 2012. I came here for undergrad, then did my OPT for 1 year, went to law school, then COVID happened, went to business school, and then when I was about to graduate with a law degree and a business degree, uh, I was still struggling to find jobs. And so, I went every time there's a question that says, will you now or in the future require a work visa? And
Mm,
I'm an honest guy, despite my last name being Lai. I tell people Jimmy Lai never lies. So I'm
right.
honest and I say, yes, I will require a work visa. And immediately it's an automatic response saying you're not qualified. So I
Mm,
was fortunate to find out about E-2 visa, and Taiwan is part of the E-2 treaty country. So I was able to find out more and utilize that visa for me to start my own business and to be able to stay here 5 years at a time, and it's renewable every 5 years as long as the business is operational.
mm. I mean, that's interesting. I think if I think back about how any of us get into anything, there's always a story, right? I mean, I don't think I ever got involved in a fight at school unless it was protecting someone else. And I think you and I spoke previously, and you mentioned to me that you actually decided to study law because of, your mom.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell the
So I
listeners about
recently,
that.
sure, of course. Yeah. So, my mom is an entrepreneur herself. She started her own kindergarten language school. And
Mm,
her style is a no nonsense. If you don't cooperate with her education policies and the way that she educates, she will happily refund you the tuition and tell you to your face and say, "Yeah, I think it's best that you send your children elsewhere." Now, the problem with that is that the parents that she's kind of tell that to are affluential. They're doctors, lawyers, business owners, and some politicians, and they'll be angry
mm,
that their children is not good enough for our school. So they would threaten and say, "I'm going to sue you." And so, as a 5-year-old growing up, I see that often. And so I told my mom, I want to become a lawyer to protect her. So that was my
wow.
inspiration to become an attorney in the first place. Now, throughout growing up, I kind of looked at, you know, how much it would take to become a lawyer. So I kind of gave up on that dream until um, until after I finished my undergrad degree here in the U.S.
Mm. So you grew up from which age here in the States?
I moved to South Dakota when I was 10. So from 10 to
Okay.
15, I was in South Dakota. and then I was a high school exchange student in Japan, Germany, and England.
Okay. Wow, such an interesting story. And I must tell the listeners, just if you have an opportunity, have look up Jimmy, have him look up on LinkedIn. He's such an interesting character, and he's such an inspiration. If you are practicing law and you need a true partner to refer cases to you, and you want a good guy that you can refer cases to, he's your man. I really like reading his
Thank you
posts
very
every
much.
morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Yeah, the
like you. I
LinkedIn
like you,
post
Jimmy.
is, I appreciate it. Yeah, and your posts are great as well, talking about technology. And that's a whole new space that I'm now aware of. And, I see some people posting that maybe AI firms are coming to take our jobs. So it'll be interesting to learn more about technology.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about the AI taking our jobs, but I definitely I recommend if you're out on LinkedIn, look up Jimmy. Jimmy, you're not on LinkedIn as Jimmy, right? Let me see. You're on the
Yeah,
what
well,
is
that's
it
right.
on as?
Hung-Lin Lai. That's my actual Chinese name. It's Hung-Lin.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. What I'll do is I'll put it in the chat here when the guys edit it. They'll put your LinkedIn profile in there. But we'd like you guys to link up with Jimmy, link up with me, find me on LinkedIn, um, because I feel it's so if you look at why someone get into something like you wanted to study law because your mom was being bullied, and people said things like, "Oh, we'll sue you," and it's influential people, and we've all learned that it seems like justice can often be reserved for those with money. It shows you who the lawyers are, who they the schoolyard protectors of bullies. It's those that quietly, stand up and say, no longer, I draw a line here. You won't do that, right?
Right. Yeah, that's been my why, and it's a really strong why of why I'm doing this. My mom does not need my protecting now, but there's many people that I believe needs are kind of protecting them, securing justice for them, uh, you know,
Mm,
doing everything we can to help improve their situation.
I agree. I mean, when I started looking at immigration, like in 20, I think I was immigrating in my head, for the longest time. We already started looking at immigration in 2008, and it's
Wow.
2025 now. And at the time when I went online, you can find so much noise on the internet because everyone just gets to say what they want, and opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, so people just go out there, they post all kind of stuff, and people read it online and they think that's the truth. Like I've
Mhm.
seen so many things, like people saying, "Oh, you can just do this or you can just do that," but it's always important to speak to an immigration lawyer first because immigration is a complex subject matter. And so, if you have a question about it, I encourage you to reach out and speak to someone and
Yeah,
reach out to
exactly.
someone that you can connect with, right?
Yeah, yeah. You hit it straight on the heads. It is it's complex. There are nuances for straightforward cases. Yes, it's pretty straightforward. You might not need an attorney, but for the most part, there's always a little detail here and there that you want to be aware of, and it could drastically change the outcome. What you think that's like a
Mm.
tiny thing, it really can change your whole application.
All right. I agree with you. I mean, you can look at two cases. They may look identical, uh, on the surface, but when you start asking questions, you realize very quickly, there's a change here. There's something that's different in this situation than what there is in the other, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So let's chat a little bit about your passion. So if you go onto your website, I see you guys, like everyone else, you do a little bit of divorce cases, you do a little bit of mediation, but your focus really is immigration. And especially, you've really carved out a niche for yourself within that E-2 investors visa space. So what is the investor visa all about? I mean, what makes the E2 different from the E5, for example?
Yeah, so E2 visa, I would say it's a more catered to common people like us. Most people are not walking around with 800, 900,000 or more in their pockets or in their bank accounts. That wasn't me. I didn't have that. And so luckily with the E2 visa, uh, despite some of the information that most attorneys will recommend 100,000 or 150,000 as investments. Most of the time, you don't need to invest that much. In the regulation, it only says substantial amount, and that substantial amount is relative to the particular industry or the particular business. For example, uh, we recently had a home service-based business approved with less than 40,000 in actual funds spent. Now, she also had additional funds in the bank account for operating purposes, but for the purposes of putting money at risk and having spent that money, she only spent 40,000 in total for her home service-based business. So it really depends on uh, what's the substantial amount and relative to that particular industry. On the other hand, if you're thinking about starting a Tesla company or starting a car manufacturing company, 100,000, 200,000, even 500,000 might not be enough. So it's really just relative to the industry, the type of business that you're looking to do. So that's why I like the E2 visa. Not only it allowed me to start my own law firm straight out of law school, uh, I'm able to help other people, similar situations. They might not have law degrees, that's fine. They might not have an accountancy degree. But as long as it's a business that they can get into, uh, the barriers to entry is much lower. And so this is what I like,
Mm,
being able to help contribute to their dreams. And despite some sentiment feeling that America might not be a really great place to be, but there's still a lot of people who believe in the American dream, who wants to live in the
amen.
U.S., who wants to work in the U.S., like myself. And so
Mhm.
this E2 visa, sometimes I like to call it the American Dream visa. It's a little bit more attainable visa than most, and you really create your opportunities. You're not reliant on anything else. You come here, boots on the ground, you start working hard, and you put in the effort, and with time, um, you were able to really carve out a space for yourself. The U.S. market is so large that
Right.
just by servicing a really small percentage of people, you can be successful.
Right. So just for clarity for those out there listening about the E2 visa, the E2 is specifically there for people from treaty countries. So what would that be? I mean, is there a list somewhere that people can look up treaty countries
Yeah,
somewhere?
yeah. So there's the website, the travel.state.gov, or you just type in
Okay.
Google E2 visa treaty countries. There'll be a list, and right now it's about 80 countries. So countries like Canada, UK, Japan, Germany, Argentina, Australia, Armenia, Pakistan, Bangladesh. So there's quite a little bit of countries, and so even
Right.
if you're not from those countries, there may be a pathway. If become a citizen of one of those countries, then you can also utilize the E2 visa.
Right. And that I mean, that's part of my own immigration story as well. I mean, we wanted to come to the States on a L1 visa. And when we originally started to look at it, when we started investigating the L1 visa, there were so many requirements. And here's the one thing is the reason I started that South Africans immigrating to the US group was because there wasn't enough information out there. When I started looking, I mean, like I say, you found all this fluff on the internet about this and so on says, but you really need to do your homework. And when you start doing it, you start realizing there isn't an actual amount specified anywhere for L1 to
Mhm.
be transferred. There's no specific amount for an E2. Like if you're looking up an E2, all it says is a substantial amount, right? Am I right?
Right. Yes, correct.
Substantial amount of investment. And so like you were saying earlier, is that that substantial amount for a guy starting a Tesla firm would be possibly uh, higher millions, if not billions. But if you're looking at starting a smaller firm or like a pool company or are those still accepted, pool companies?
Yeah, a pool service
Pool
company. Yeah,
services.
yeah,
Okay, so pool services, one of those smaller kind of things, anyone can really do that. And the nice thing about it is that the question is how much is enough? And you saying that is a relevant question depending on the type of business you start. Am I right? Am I understanding you right?
correct. Yes, absolutely. It's always relevant to what it is. And when people are working with us, we try to be as specific as possible at some points, and we try to make it easy for the officer, whoever's adjudicating it, to understand the business plan, like what's the business. Most
Mm,
officers, they're not business degree. They didn't graduate with a business degree. And
right.
in fact, I recently spoke to another former visa officer who explained to me that um, they didn't have much training on the E2. They just had a couple of days of training, and they were off to the embassy, and then they came across an E2 case, but they didn't have much training on it. So it was really just kind of looking at, okay, is this a legitimate business? Would this fit? And kind of looking at the regulation of substantial investment, and they're like, it's a toss up for them. So uh,
Right.
I try to make it
So
as easy as possible.
so is that part of what you do? Do you help, let's say someone, let's just say someone approaches you and he says to you, listen, man, I want to start a business in the US. I've heard of this E2 visa. Is that something you help him with, like, positioning that, explaining that so that it's easily readable to the case officer that's looking at it? What is it that you actually like do?
Yeah. So actually, when people come to us, they have this American dream, and they find out, yeah, they can start a business. But one of the bottleneck is they don't know what business to start. They don't know what business to. You can also buy. You don't have to start your own business.
You can
You can
buy,
also
you can buy
buy.
a
You can
business.
also buy. Yes, you can also buy a business or buy a franchise. Those are allowed as long as you own at least 50% of the enterprise. So those are allowed.
Is
So
it
when they
is it
come to
50?
me,
Is it 50 or is it 51? How do you need to
50%. So that these
50%?
so people usually recommend 51, but 50% is enough. And uh, so we would say 50% if there are two nationals who wants to come together. So each will be 50%. But typically,
Okay.
we would recommend if it's just you and another person who doesn't need an E2 visa for control purposes, for things that's not related to the E2 itself, we'll recommend 51%. So you have ultimate control over your own company. Because you don't want to get into a situation where both founders are kind of in a stalemate and it's 50-50 and kind of two founders trying to do things in different directions.
I gotcha. So does the other 50% shareholder, must that be an American citizen?
So it can be either. It can be an American citizen or another person from a different treaty country. So let's say
Okay.
person A is from Canada, person B can be from Bangladesh, and they both come together and they can each get their own respective E2 visas.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't
Yeah,
know that actually.
yeah.
So
And
just
so,
again yeah, sure, you go.
oh no, go ahead.
No, no, I was just going to say, just for those listening from South Africa, just remember that the E2 is not available for people from South Africa. South Africa is not a treaty country to the US, which is why I said that was part of my own immigration journey, because when the L1 turned out to be not the route that I would be following, we eventually decided, and we actually had a path to emigrate to the United Kingdom because we have ancestry rights to the UK. And because we could go to the UK, I thought, okay, you know what we'll do? We'll go to the UK, we'll pay our dues, we'll become UK citizens. And because the UK is a treaty country, that's how we would then get to the US. And then, long story short, in between, we actually were selected for the diversity visa program. And so, all of that
Congrats! Oh
became
wow, that's
unnecessary.
amazing.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
a That's quite a story in its own.
Yeah, that's an
So
amazing story. I've tried the DV
yeah,
lottery 13 times and never gotten picked. And in fact, recently
listen,
again, never got picked.
keep going. You know that we entered it for 13 years in a row before we got selected.
Oh wow, I guess that's
13
the
years.
secret. At least 13 times, and that's the
It's
irony of my
it's not
situation, right?
it's not even necessary. So Isabel that works with me, her and her husband, they applied for the very first time in year one, and they got selected. First time ever.
They're
I've
extremely lucky.
I've actually met so many people that have just selected in the first time. And
Yeah.
the story is because I deal a lot with diversity visa applicants.
Mhm.
When I hear their stories, usually it's like it's either, oh, we applied first time, we got lucky, or oh, we've been trying many years, and all of a sudden, it just dropped. Yeah, just
Yeah.
if
So it's
if you're
just
doing DV, just keep going. If even for yourself, just keep going with that.
yeah. I'm keep going with it, and that's the I was gonna say it's the irony of my situation is that I'm an E2 visa holder, and I do help other people get their E2 visas, but I'm also helping others with their green cards and citizenship. So they come to
Yeah.
me. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm not a green card holder. But I'm able to help them first pursue their green cards and citizenship. But I'm still they call it a non-immigrant visa holder, a E2 visa holder. So that's the
Right.
irony of my situation now. But I also want to go back real quick that about when people come to us. What we do is that we meet with them and we have a strategy session to understand kind of their background, what might be good for them, and we also work with franchise brokers. So when they come work with
Okay.
us, we set them up with a meeting, and the franchise broker actually spends almost 3 hours with them, kind of
Wow.
educating them about franchises and their options. So after that, they decide whether they want to start their own, they want to go through a business broker to buy a business, or they want to join a franchise. So we kind of give them the options and explain all the pros and cons of each, and they make their decision.
Hmm. Okay. Now, I mean, when you do an E2, are you expected to hire a certain amount of US citizens or make a certain amount of hires in the first
Um,
year or like with the EB5? No, it's not the EB5. The L1 requires you to make a certain or to employ a certain amount of people, right?
mhm.
What does the E2 say? How does that deal with it?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I get asked that a lot. E2 does not have a requirement about how many people you need to hire. Like L1 there is, and then EB5 you need to have 10 US workers. But with E2, that's the great thing is there's no requirement. However, when some people they're granted the E2 visa for 2 years or 5 years, in the business plan, we want to show some growth because ultimately the treaty investor visa, the word investor, the US government wants you to invest and wants you to contribute to the economy. So ultimately, they want to see you grow the business. They want to see you hire people. So eventually, in the business plan, we like to write in that the plan is to hire one, two, three, depending on your business needs, depending on your business plan and growth goals. Uh, that we will write that in, but there is no strict requirements. For example, I had a California chiropractor client for a renewal E2. Uh, Ultimately, we blamed it on COVID that he wasn't able to hire any staff. So
Right.
he we said that we didn't hire anyone because of COVID, but in the next 5 years, he will hire two more part-time office staff. So before the renewal was up, he did in fact hire one part-time, and then with plans to hire another, and then we got him approved with that plan. So really, the key thing is the last couple of years before your renewal, you want to show at least some growth. So it gives you time. That's what I like about E2. Uh,
Mm.
yes, you want to be successful right away, but it gives you a little bit of leeway to get your business ramped up. Another example is my personal example. When I was applying for my own E2, in my business plan, I wrote that by year 5, we will have 12 employees. and we're right now coming up to our 3rd-year anniversary this October, and we're already at 16 full-time employees. So we've grown exponentially faster than we've ever imagined. Um, but yeah, but what I learned is for some people, we don't have to be that aggressive. I was just too ambitious and I wanted to have that many people, but typically 1 to 3 additional staff would be enough.
Listen, I just want to pause there for a second. I just want to say, like, if you are another immigration attorney and you're listening to this, you need to become part of our peer group. Um, Jimmy is just an amazing. Like 4 years ago, he couldn't even find a job. People were saying to him, "Hey, listen, man, I like you. You've got a pretty face, but you know,
I don't know about pretty.
they they wouldn't employ this guy." And today, it's 3 years later, right? When I
Yes,
met Jimmy,
20. Yeah,
he had already built his firm up from zero, from being employee number one to having 15 full-time staff. And he's just told you he's now got 16. So
yes.
if you're listening to this and you think like, how did he do it? Let's start a peer group. Let's get together. Let's it's iron that sharpens iron, and we need to figure out what this guy did right. He's doing something right. One of the things
Uh,
I read that I really liked about what you did, Jimmy, is you found the guy that was in sales. It's a gentleman that may have had hassles himself, being at an age where people looked at him saying, "I don't know if we want to employ you," you know. And what you did is you looked at him, and what you saw was experience, and you saw the ability for him. So you brought him into your operations. Am I right?
yeah, he was our first full-time employee, and so he we brought him on as a business manager first. And it was also serendipity in a way that I came across him on a local Facebook group, and he
Wow.
talked about his employment, and then something within me, just I saw the potential and that he could really help our firm, because I was at a point where I was doing everything but still struggling. So in 9 months into the business, I was still struggling. We were either breaking even or losing money each month. And so I realized that I really needed to ask for help. And this gentleman, he's my dad's age actually, and so quite a little bit old, but I saw a lot of experience in him. And I asked him if he wanted to use his experience to help a young, relatively younger, growing firm, and he agreed. So he was our first full-time hire, and since then we just been exponential growths. After he joined, we convinced my partner, my co-founder, to become full-time. He was only part-time,
Wow.
only all the way through, but we showed him the path and the vision and say, yes, you need to be full-time, you need to be committed, and let's move this forward. So we went from, like you said, zero, then we did 10 grand months, and then now we're doing 6-figure months. And this year we are on trajectory to be at about close to 2 million in revenue.
Man, hat off to you. I really celebrate that. I mean, I get so excited when people do well, when entrepreneurs do well. And you've just, I mean, I read your LinkedIn post. I remember you saying you, at the time, you couldn't even really afford him, but what you did was you paid him more than what you were paying yourself. And that
Yeah,
to me that's vision. That's looking at the potential of someone saying, I want to grow, I want to take my company to the next level. Because unless you open your hand and you let go of what's in it, how can you ever make space for more to come into it, right?
yeah,
It's
I
it's
like
just
I like
a
that.
it's just a
Yeah, that
good
was
principle to have. Is
yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. And even now, today, I'm probably still one of the lowest paid within our organization. Still, I'm making sure everyone gets paid. They're happy with us, and that's how you recruit great people to work for us. We weren't able to offer those really top of the line, higher competitive wages, so we had to be creative on the compensation models, the culture we're creating, and in fact, one funny thing I like to say is that you've never seen a law firm with a massage chair in an office building, and we have a massage chair for staff and for
Wow.
prospects. So that's something that we're always trying to think differently, how to do law differently. That's kind of our motto, is how do we do law differently? Because I
Wow.
know that I don't have the gray hairs, I don't have the wrinkles in my eyes to show my age and wisdom. So how do I compete among the experienced attorneys? So we always had to do things differently.
Hmm. Well, Jimmy, let me speak a blessing out over you. May what you have today be the least you'll ever have in your entire life. May you just continue to prosper and to grow in wisdom, and for your firm to grow. And may your own immigration journey also turn out to be one where it can be a testimony for others. So I really bless you with that. I love the way you think. I love the way this is what America is all about, guys,
Exactly.
is people like this. This is a not just a dream maker, but he also took that dream for himself and he made that a reality for himself. Man, it's
Exactly.
you're an inspiration, Jimmy. I
Yeah.
really love hearing your
Thank
story,
you.
and
Yeah, I'm just
I hope
fortunate.
others connect with us. Mm,
Yeah, fortunate to
really,
just meet
others.
great people. Thank you, and then meeting you as well, and giving me this opportunity to share a platform with you and mutually learn about each other. You learning more about the E2 visa and helping your audience learn more, and me learning from you regarding the
Yeah,
technology side. Because as you've said, since we last talked, we added another person, and I'm still the in-house IT person. I'm going into the admins and creating an email address and then giving them access to this and that. So
right.
eventually, we'll
We're
definitely
still
be
gonna
needing
fix all
an
of that for you.
IT. Yes.
We're still gonna fix all of that for you, Jimmy.
Yeah.
And if you guys are listening, if you're another lawyer, that's what we do. Is I haven't asked Jimmy for his business yet. I like paying it forward. I like helping people, and I like investing in their lives before they invest in mine. So we're doing it the same way. But I want to Jimmy, let's get back to the E2. So, I mean,
Sure.
there's not a specific amount of money that you have to put in, right?
Mhm.
It's a substantial amount, and what that is depends on the specific situation. But can you bring your family? I mean, is it just you? Is it just you that get that visa? Or let's say you have a spouse and you've got children. What about them? How do they get seen by this E2 treaty investors visa?
Man, you're on a roll. You're asking all these really great questions, and that's another common question that we get asked a lot. It's like, what about my family? What about my kids?
Mm,
Well, that's why the E2 is phenomenal. Is you as the investor, you get your E2 visa, and then your spouse essentially gets what's like an open work permit. He or
okay.
she, they
So
don't need
so they're
to,
allowed to work?
yes.
They're
So they
allowed
don't
to
need
work?
to,
Okay.
right? They don't need to separately apply for a work permit. They can work at any job anywhere they want without additional authorization. And kids under 21 can be on your dependent visa, and they can enroll into public school until 21 and
Okay.
stay on the E2 visa. And once they age out, they will need to be on their own F1 visa. That's what I tell my clients. Also, another strategy that I share with them is that you could decide whoever, like the husband or the wife, whoever has the best potential to find employment elsewhere and potentially be hired on as H-1B or EB options for green card. Um, the other person will not be the primary investor, but the person that really doesn't have a great skill set for jobs elsewhere be the primary investor. And that could be a strategy and a pathway to a green card later, which is that if your spouse gets sponsored and hired by a US company and gets a green card, typically that's probably 2 to 4 years of time to get the green card. But when that happens, you the person, the E2 visa holder being married to the spouse will also get their green card that way. So that's another strategy that I like to share, is that even though the E2 visa there's no direct pathways to the green card, there are options.
Okay. So just to take a step back. So in other words, the E2 investor visa is really a non-immigrant work type visa. Am I right with that? or
You
not
mean for
really?
the investor?
For the investor, yes.
Yeah. So for the investor, their purpose is to come direct and manage the business. So um, that's one caveat is that you don't want the officer to see this as a way to circumvent the H-1B. Even though
Correct.
I'm an attorney, but my E-2 visa was for as a CEO of the company where I'm directing and managing the business. So in fact, actually, I only spend less than 20% of my time doing the legal work. I'm actually in a CEO role where you mentioned earlier that our firm does a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but we have different attorneys heading the family law division, the criminal division, the estate
Mm.
planning, the personal injury, the immigration. So at my role as the CEO, I'm here to direct, allocate the resources, and grow the divisions and grow the company. So that's something to be careful about. But yes, essentially, the spouse of the E2 visa holder will get it. What's pretty much a work visa, and
Okay.
being a dependent, the spouse can work anywhere they want.
So is that then the avenue that that E2 investor visa ultimately has to a green card is via their spouse? Is that how it works?
Via their spouse, or if your business grows and you achieve certain accolades, a potential path for a national interest waiver application,
Okay.
or EP1C potentially as a executive manager. But NIW would be probably the pathway as an entrepreneur, and then the spouse if they get sponsored. Those are the most common pathways. And the last thing is any investment you make from the beginning of the E2 enterprise counts and accumulates towards
Hmm.
the eventual EP5. So
So
anything you
when
spend
you
from year one.
so when you reinvest in the business, that also counts towards an EB5 ultimately. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, correct. And I've confirmed this fact with several of our colleagues, and even for myself, that's what I'm looking at. And the unfortunate situation with so many people we've hired is that the payroll doesn't count towards the accumulation of their investment, unfortunately,
I
or
gotcha.
else I would be there already. So that might be my
Wow.
miscalculation on my part. Is maybe I should have tried to save more money instead of hiring more people and then allocating it to buying our own office building instead. So that
Hmm.
might have been my miscalculation, but we're working towards that goal as well.
Wow. But just a quick one. So how long does the E2 get issued for initially, and then are you allowed to renew it? How
Yeah,
does that work?
typically E2, it depends on the country, but typically you're granted 2 to 5 years of the visa itself. Every time you enter, you're granted 2 years of stay on your I-94. So, for example, a Canadian would get a 5-year visa initially, and then every time they enter through customs, they're granted a 2-year period of stay. So essentially, that Canadian can actually stay for a total of 7 years. So that Canadian can come in right before the visa expires and be granted a 2-year period of stay. So essentially, it could be up to 7 years. And so that is another strategy that I share with clients. And also, sorry to go off tandem a little bit,
No, no.
uh,
Go
and
for it.
this took me probably a week of research when I was trying to find out about my own E2 visa, find out about my own E2 visa application, the difference between a visa and a status. That's one thing that it took me 1 week. I didn't understand the difference, and I was trying to figure out should I do a change of status because I was an F1 student already in the U.S. Should I do a change
All
of
right.
status, or should I apply for the visa and leave the country and apply for the visa? And so it took me a whole week, and finally I realized they're both are possible, but the difference is that you could do the change of status in the US, but as soon as you leave the US, you lose the status. So you're no longer E2 visa, E2 status. You'll need some sort of visa to come back in. So the visa is like a entry ticket to the US. So ultimately, I decided I needed to leave the country and apply at a AIT, they call it AIT in Taipei for the E2 visa, so that it allows me multiple entries and exits whenever I want to.
Okay.
And also, there's no As a green card holder, you're told that you need the physical presence, you need to maintain however many days. But with the E2 visa, they don't have this requirement, so you can
So,
be
so
in and out as much as you want.
I was just about to ask you about that. So you are allowed to travel with the E2 visa, right?
Yes,
Is
with the
that
E2
what you're
visa,
saying?
yes, correct. So in and out anytime you
Okay.
want, and there's no requirements about you need to stay in the U.S. for X amount of days. For example, my wife is in Canada, and I've she's a permanent resident there currently. My business is in Oklahoma, and I spend every 3 to 4 weeks. I'll go up there for 1 to 2 weeks. So currently, every time I cross the border, the border agent will ask me, "Oh, E2, what's your business?" And I'll say law firm, and they'll be like, "Okay, go on." So,
Okay.
but yeah, so that's the kind of the funny thing with well, not funny, but it's more simple with the E2 visa. They understand there's the E2 visa, and they just want to make sure that you're running the business.
I gotcha. So, I mean, if what kind of documentation would you like if there's someone listening to us right now and they're thinking, maybe I'm going to contact Jimmy and I'm going to chat to him about these E2 visas. If, I mean, if you would like to have the perfect intake, what kind of documentation would you recommend people have in hand before they make that call? What is it that you would like to see or that you want to tell them? You need to have this, you need to have this. What should they come to you with? What do they need?
Well, the most basic requirements is verify that they're a nationality, a national of a treaty country. So that's really important. The second thing would be make sure that they have the funds to be able to invest. That's really
Mhm.
key. You need
So
to be able
just on
to.
that, are those funds, that must be their funds. They're not allowed to borrow that, right?
Yeah, so personal loans count. So if they have from their home
Okay.
country, if they're able to get personal loans, even
Okay.
gifts
So it does.
count. Yeah, so
All
gifts
right. So
also
they're
counts
allowed
as
to use
well,
loans.
and
They're
gifts.
allowed to use loans and gifts. Okay.
Yeah, but it has to be
I didn't
personal.
know
So
that.
if they use a business loan using their own business, or like a different business or different collateral, or even if they buy a business with seller financing, that won't work. It has to be their
I
own personal
understand.
funds. So personal loans
Okay.
or even gifts. So gifts from family members saying that there's no expectation of a return. It's a purely a gift. Here's 20,000 as a gift. That will work.
Okay. So proof of citizenship, do they have to have some kind of residency within the country that they claim E2 status from for a certain period? Must they have lived in that country for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, so that is the newer rule that you need to stay. I believe it's either 2 or 3 years. I'll need to confirm, but you need to stay in that country for a couple years because some people have been circumventing that rule by purchasing a
Mm.
passport from a E2 treaty country, and to curb that, they made a requirement that you actually need to be living there for, I believe it's 2 or 3 years before you can do that. So if you gain
Right.
your citizenship because of purchasing a passport and not having lived there. That's the new requirements they've added. The third thing that I ask for when people come to me is that kind of understand what business they want to do. That's one thing,
Mhm.
or and kind of have a plan, some sort of idea about what they want to do because most of the time they get stuck in the inability to make the decision of what they actually want to do. So having that in mind and having some sort of a small plan in mind about the timeline they want to operate under, because it does take a little bit of time. One of the last requirements for the E2 to be approved is that the business has to be either operational or close to operating. So that's the last requirement is that it's a real and operating business. So we really want to think about the timeline. For example, if that person has kids, they want to enroll their kids into school. Now, a new school year in the U.S. typically is August or September. They want to make sure that they plan ahead because it can take time for the visa to be approved and for the business to be set up. So they kind of want to be able to plan in advance. Typically, we say, at least 6 to 9 months in advance, and we can kind of match the timeline.
All right. Now, the US is a big place. Do you help people only in your home state, or do you help immigrants from other countries or people looking to invest on the E2 investor visa in all states?
Yeah, so I help in all states, and that's the beauty of immigration law. It's federal, so it allows me to help clients from all over the U.S. and all over the world, and wherever they choose to relocate. If it deals with specific state law, we will find a local partner there to facilitate the state law issue. But right now, our firm, we're licensed in Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, uh,
Okay.
Washington State. So we're licensed in some states, but for the most part, because of immigration is federal, we can facilitate the process.
Right. And I just want to make that clear to those listening out there. So what Jimmy means by that is that if you want to get divorced in Texas, Oklahoma, and any one of those states that his business or his firm is registered in, he can help you. However, because immigration is a federal matter, they're able to assist in all 50 states with any kind of immigration matter, as well as with the E2 treaty investor visa. So it doesn't matter where you ultimately see that investment that you want to make. He would continue to be a good resource to contact. Jimmy, just
Correct.
a
Thank
quick
you
one. I mean,
for the clar. Yeah.
what kind of businesses do you frequently see come through? I mean, what is popular? What is a popular type of business, or rather, is there businesses that are not eligible? What is eligible for an E2?
Yeah. So what's something that's ineligible is a passive investment. So a lot of people, they want to get into real estate, and it's possible. We will formulate a strategy, and even I also work with a real estate attorney who that's all she does is real estate immigration strategies to make sure it's not passive. So that's the one thing is any business that becomes is a passive investment that won't work. So it has to be an active investment. So for real estate, it will be something like property management or
Okay.
some sort of brokerage company and make it more diverse. Some of the most common ones, because of the lower barrier to entry, will be service-based businesses like landscaping, um, pool service cleaning,
So
residential cleaning.
are those ineligible?
Those are eligible. Those are
Those are
lower.
eligible?
Those are easier for the most part because you don't need an additional license or or certification to service, like a home cleaning, commercial cleaning, pool service. There might be a little bit of certification there for pool service, but for the most part, those service-based businesses are a little bit easier. I usually tell people to stay away from the food and beverage unless you're already experienced in that industry because the margins for those are really really low and the failure rates for food and
Mm.
beverage industry is much higher. It's more competitive, so unless you come from that background, I usually suggest maybe stay away from the food and beverage side of the business of the industry.
I understand. Now, I mean, does it happen that some people sometimes come on an E2, they get approved, and then things doesn't work out? Like what then? Are they allowed to, recover? I mean, that's the one thing about entrepreneurs, right? They always come back. They
Yes.
like get, maybe they fall off their horse, but they recover, they dust themselves off, and then they're like, let's go again. So do they ever get an opportunity to try again if it didn't work out, if they couldn't make it
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah, so if they, for some reason, if it doesn't happen, they leave, they want to come back, they can always apply for a different type of business, invest in a different type of business.
Okay.
That's totally allowed. Even if you want to rejuvenate the business, like that's the beauty of it, is that if you're granted it for 5 years, uh, you can have losses the first 3 years, but obviously you don't want to have losses. But if you do, that's
Mm.
okay. The fourth and the fifth year will be the most vital in getting your E2 visa renewed. And so, if this is not the correct industry or the correct business you chose, you can always kind of give up on that and then try again with a different industry.
Okay. What about if you like were declined? Like, let's just say you submit an application, you guys do your best, and the guy gets declined. What, I mean, are you allowed to apply again? How does that work?
Yeah, you're definitely allowed to apply again, but you want to speak to an immigration attorney or to us and kind of see why the application was denied. Was it not spending the substantial investment or not having enough money at risk? Was it that the business plan didn't make sense, or was the business too passive in the eyes of the immigration officer?
Mm.
So we're going to have to evaluate what went wrong and then resubmit the application with additional support evidence or additional documentation showing why this application should be approved.
Mm. I gotcha. And again, just for those listening out there, I want to make a statement. I have no shares in Lai Turner, so I have no reason to say this. But if you're going to go out and spend money on an immigration attorney, make sure you pick the right horse from the beginning. And it's because Jimmy's so active on his LinkedIn. That's why I say follow him on LinkedIn, because he's so active on LinkedIn and because I see he knows what he's talking about. I can confidently say that if you go to him, I know a lot about the E2s, I know a lot about the L1s, I understand the different categories. There's immigration visas, there's non immigration visas. And immigration is complex. I have a law degree myself. I don't practice as a lawyer. But if you're going to be into get information about immigration or about work visas or E2 investor visas, you need to speak to people that knows what they're talking about. Because I've seen far too many people who have given their money to guys that are happily just taking it. And then 2 or 3 or 6 months down the line, they've spent 35K and they still have nothing to show for it because the guy didn't have a clue on, how to make this happen. He didn't advise them properly on, what type of business. He didn't check out their credentials, what kind of paperwork that they actually came from an E2 treaty country, that they've stayed in the country for the amount of years. So I really do want to encourage you, speak to someone, reach out to Jimmy and make sure that you speak to him and give him all of the evidence. Another thing is, I don't want to encourage people to hold back on anything. Whatever it is, tell your lawyer everything. Like if you have had anything declined in the past, tell the guy about it. He can only help you as best according to what you share with him. So share everything. Be transparent. Be open. Share everything with him. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
enough about
Thank you so
that.
much for
Like
that.
that little tip, like use it, don't use it.
Yeah.
So I think just tell me. I mean, how long does it take, Jay? Like let's typically from. I know there's different situations, but the median kind of a case, like from start to finish of an application like that. How long does something like that take?
Typically, if something all falls in line and the business is operating already and documents are collected, typically the fastest would be about 3 months to have
Okay,
everything
wow,
from the beginning
that
to the
quick.
end. Typically, no, not typically, if everything falls in line, but usually what
Okay,
we're telling our clients is it could take anywhere from 6 months to 12 months. Uh,
okay,
the potential delay also might be the wait times at the consular and then at the embassy level, where you submit the application, but the interview date is 2 weeks, 4 weeks, even 8 weeks or 16 weeks out. So that could be the potential delay. But for if you hire any law firm or anyone, uh, the other time would be getting the business operating and operational, getting those documents that your attorney needs from you. So business formation documents, um, bank accounts, bank statements showing where the money came from, and then receipts, invoices, expenses, where you put the money, where you spent your money. So those are some of the things that there's a list, document checklist that each embassy they have different procedures, but for the most part, they're similar. They'll say like they need this document, they just need this document. So the attorney that you're working with will have to assemble the packet and submit the application.
okay, all right. Now, just a quick one on the do you apply for this E2 from your home country, or can you apply from it if you're here already on a different visa from within the United States?
Yeah, you can do both. So that goes back to whether you want to do the change of status. If you're
Okay.
here in the U.S. with an active status, you can do the change of status. And if you have no desire or no need to ever leave the U.S., then we can do the change of status and then renew your E2 status. But if you do need to, let's say, go back to your home country to visit your family members, then I would highly recommend applying for the visa at the consulate or the embassy so that you can enter in and out freely.
Okay, I get it. And just in terms of the, so you're here, let's just say you're here on an E2 visa. Are you allowed to study while you are here on the E2 visa as the primary member of the E2 investor visa?
So as primary investor, you will not be able to enroll full time, but you
Okay.
could take some part time classes, some classes here and there. For example, as a law firm owner, I'm not taking university classes, but I am joining masterminds, joining classes to learn more about leadership, learn how to grow my law firm, learn how to do marketing better. So in a sense, that I'm enrolling in those courses, but as a primary investor, you're not supposed to be enrolled in a school full time, but you can enroll in
Okay.
a part time class.
And that makes sense, right? Because a study visa is a different type of visa. So what the
Mhm.
government is saying is they're saying if you're coming here on a investor visa, we want to see you grow your business. We want to see that you add value to the economy. We want you to be involved in your business. That's probably how they
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
perceive that. Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if you sell your business, like you don't get to keep your investor visa, right? You lose
No.
that. You
Correct.
don't?
Yeah. No, you lose it. You
Okay.
lose it. The once,
You
yeah,
lose it.
you if you sell it, you exit the business. There's no basis of for you
Okay.
to with the E2 visa. Yeah.
So the goal is you come here and you grow and you grow. That's what you need to do.
Yes.
You need to show the US government you're making money.
Yeah. Making
Okay.
money and paying Uncle Sam.
That's it. And listen, man, I tell you, I say to my wife often, I wake up every morning being grateful for being here. This is one of the greatest countries in the whole world. Like, where else can you arrive with 5 suitcases and a couple of years later you could have your own home and run a business and contribute to the economy, pay taxes? It's just something else. It's really it's an honor and a privilege to be here to live this American dream, and it really still is alive. I mean, I know for a lot of you out there, you hear people talk about America's not what it used to be. It's not as great, and look at what these are first world problems, guys. These are first world problems. I'd rather have these problems than any other problems. I come from South Africa. um, Jimmy comes from Thailand, right? And
Taiwan.
so Taiwan,
Yeah.
and we have different problems. Some of those are developing country problems. There's people that come here from third world countries. Those are different problems than first world problems. I'd rather
Exactly.
deal with the first world problems any day of the week.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and I'm truly inspired by your story as well about how you landed with 5 suitcase and you're able to. And looking at your background, it looks amazing already with lots of books and artifacts. So you really built a amazing life here in the U.S.
Now, listen, don't always be fooled by a guy with a 5 suitcase story. I once and mine isn't that simple either, because I once met this guy that was in South Africa. He arrived and he assumedly had nothing. And so when I chatted to him, I was like, because I was inspired by his story, and I was like, so how did you make a comeback? And he was saying, when I got here, I had nothing, because he had some diamond mines up in the Congo. And I said, well, tell me. Like, and he's like, no, I arrived with nothing. When I got here, I had the jet plane that I arrived with, the Rolex on my hand, and a couple of $1,000s in my bank. And I said, like, you had a jet? And he was like, yeah. I thought, nothing to me is not quite nothing to someone else. So it's always a little bit more complex than that. But so Jimmy, we up on the hour. I just want to say I really had fun chatting with you. Just one last thing. On the E2s, there was something else I wanted to know. Oh, yes, we have these quotas on the H1Bs. And we've got quotas and almost like a lottery. Are there any quotas involved with the E2s? None.
No, there's no quotas. No, none.
Okay, all righty. Good, man. Listen, it's been fun. I hope you have a fantastic month. You have a fantastic week. And thank you so much for spending time with me. It was a great hour. We should do this more often. We should definitely start a peer group and get some other like-minded people involved. And how do people get hold of you if they wanted to get hold of you? Like, I'm obviously going to share your details, but I'll put all of your details in the video. But why don't you just tell us how we can get hold of you?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. Francois, it's been a great pleasure being on here and speaking with you. And if people want to get in touch with us for immigration, or if you happen to be in Oklahoma, any of the other practice areas, you can visit our website at www.laiturnerlaw.com. And I'm sure there's going to be a link below somewhere.
Yes, sir. We'll put that in for you. Okay, and then on your LinkedIn, people can find you on LinkedIn as well. Are you on other platforms?
I'm mostly on LinkedIn, starting YouTube and Instagram slowly, but LinkedIn is where I'm most active, and I invite people to connect with me and have a discussion anytime they want.
Right. And always just on our way out, just if you guys are up for a good book, Who Not How. That is an amazing book. If you haven't read it, Who Not How, I'll put the title in. I'll put the author in here and a link below. But if you haven't read it, read it. It's all about, if you're able to do something, stay in your lane. And if there's something that you need to do, don't always look for how can I learn how to do it myself? Not how, but who. Find the who's in your life. And let Jimmy be your who for solving your E2 investor worries. Let him be the guy that you go to. So on that note, Jimmy, again, thank you so much. And to all of you out there, thank you for listening. Appreciate it. Hope you got some value out of it.
I wanna squeeze something in too. I really want to give a shout out to you as well. Follow Francois' LinkedIn. He has really tons of technology advice and some tech information that's really useful. And I've actually learned quite a bit from him as well. So follow his LinkedIn as well.
I appreciate that, Jimmy. We're still going to do business, sir.
Yeah, we sure will.
All righty. Thank you so much.